What's happening this week in Warcraft? Hey, it's Soul, and you can help support the channel by liking this video, subscribing for more WoW coverage, and catching me whenever I'm live. Let's go over hotfixes announced from last week, all of which should be active right now. Gilded crests have started dropping from +8 keys down from +9s. Still pretty tough, but a much needed boost for dungeon people struggling to overcome that plateau. This ought to help more too. The buffs from Xal'atath's Bargain have been increased to 30 seconds down from 20, which would make progressing through dungeons much more manageable. Meanwhile, Xal'atath's Guile, which is the flat health and damage increase, that's been decreased from 20 to 10%, meaning people pushing from 11s to 12s, they shouldn't feel so jarred losing out on the Xal'atath buffs they've been enjoying up until now. In economic fixes, profane tinderboxes can now be purchased by trading in other rare reagents. Ringing Deep's ingots, vials of Kaheti oils, Viridian charm caps, and Gloomfathom hides, those can be traded for tinderboxes at a ratio of 3 to 1 with no limit. This can be done over at the blacksmithing supply vendor in Dornogal. The trade is probably pretty well known by now, but just in case, you might want to look at your stockpile of materials and consider what you could still sell or trade for a profit. On top of this, we can now trade Undercoin for reagent bags at a much lower price at the vendor, but I'd suggest going for completing your cosmetic collections first. This week, North American realms are told there's going to be a 1-hour maintenance. They came through last week, so let's cross our fingers. It's also the last week before patch 11.0.5, and I'll provide just little highlights of the more interesting patch additions, the one thing I regretfully recommend doing, and we'll go over a more detailed walkthrough next week just before the patch, because who's going to remember all this, right? Anyway, there are more Drakthir race class combos after the patch. You can roll them as hunters, and rogues, and priests, and mages, warriors, and warlocks. They can fight in Visage form and Drakthir form just fine. Drakthir racials have been adjusted to avoid making Drakthir class combos superior to non-Drakthir. I'll leave a list up on screen so you can pause and take a look for yourself. But to summarize, their racial cooldowns are less reliable in longer encounters because their racials, they did play a big part in Evoker gameplay to where we could kind of say they're more like class abilities than racials. So of course, because of that, Drakthir Evokers are not being affected. Most, but not all, classes are receiving big updates to their classes with talent and hero changes, and if changes for your class are less significant, it's okay, just realize that Blizzard hates you. Shaman especially have new Ascendance forms that can be further customized by glyphs they can buy at their class order hall. The Warbank will finally be used to support crafting orders. It's a huge improvement for us profession people. And I should get to the one thing I think you should do ahead of this patch, and that's to honestly empty out your Warbank, at least temporarily. Yeah, okay, it sounds lame. Why is this dude telling you to do this? And I guess this is less of me telling you what to do, it's more like me sharing my paranoia. As you might have heard, guild banks were bugged out in the 11.0.2 patch released just before the War Within launched, and an unknown number of guilds were affected with their banks being mostly wiped out. The way I understand it, WoW looks at character data, that is, the stuff in our inventories, differently from storage data like guild banks, which is not tied to a single character. The Warbank is different too. It's tied to our account, which I'd like to think has all sorts of different data redundancies and other tech to, make sure it's secure, while the guild bank, whatever was behind that, it was just open to this catastrophic failure that happened. So I want to tell myself, you know what, hey, everything's going to be fine, trust Blizzard, yada yada yada, but at the same time, I'm like, better safe than sorry. So yeah, I'm gonna empty out my Warbank and dump all my crap on a couple of characters. So I'd rather be the paranoid creator on this side of the fence than to lose out on all my precious Ceravite bolts and reagents and Warbound gear. And you don't have to do this. For me, it's just a precaution that doesn't require a lot of effort on my part except for, all the clicking. Currency transfers will be a little bit easier. Right now, your character needs to have earned a currency once in order to have more transferred to it, but after this patch, not anymore. When you first log in, expect a lot of transmog unlocks. You're going to learn appearances from quests that were once class or armor restricted. Class restricted gear, like the stuff from Molten Core, can now also be learned by any character, although the actual transmogging into these pieces, that's still restricted. Time-walking dungeons will now scale mobs up instead of scaling us down. This effectively puts an end to the days of us putting on time-walking specific gear, and we're likely to see all sorts of interesting quirks with low-level characters just smoking time-walkins instead, kind of like the mob remix. Probably going to be weird, but we have had worse. Now, as for Time Walking Raids and the Mage Tower, nothing was said specifically about those. Of course, the big highlight of the patch is the anniversary event, which goes from patch day October 22nd to January 6th, or, 76-ish days. There's going to be tons of stuff to collect via currency earned doing what you already do, and there's new activities. Notable activities that'll pull you away from your normal routine. That includes classic time walking dungeons, which I think is going to be active the entire way through. Blackrock Depths is being remade to a 10 to 15 man raid, with Raid Finder to heroic difficulties and a vendor to purchase gear from the place, and there are adventures with Chromie to repair the timelines. Well, let's go back to what to do this week. Raiders may be able to start enjoying the first soft nerf after collecting 8 or more nerub-ar finery for a total of 16, and then turn that stuff into a quest giver just inside the raid. And we don't have all the answers yet, like what if we didn't collect 8 last week, how do we catch up? So let's keep an eye out for that, but otherwise, we should expect to see fewer targeted nerfs to the raid outside of some, really big outliers, preventing lots of guilds from progressing past a certain boss. It's also the dungeon event this week, where completing 4 mythic or higher dungeons will score you a piece of hero gear. So comparing this to running 4 delves for hero track gear, it's like, okay, so mythic zeros are just as hard as level 8 delves. I guess that's what we're thinking, and we're not wrong, but there are a ton of gamers out there who just don't do mythic zeros at all anyway. They won't get access to that gear, and, well, they're not wrong either. Packed House is the brawl, and over in Mythic Plus World, this week's affix order is Tyrannical Fortified, with maybe Ascendant as the affix if this pattern holds up. This is the one where you have to interrupt or crowd control a bunch of orbs for a buff. Remember, the buff you get from these will now last 30 seconds instead of 20, so it's kind of a cute little bloodlust-like effect that should help you wipe out a pack and move on to the next. That about wraps it up for this week, but as a final tip for prepping for the patch, I suggest you start setting up a game plan for your alts, cause, as usual, the anniversary event is huge for leveling up and getting alts started. Maybe start prepping a few new Drakthir classes, or characters who will mostly do Blackrock Depths raids, and staging characters to help farm up celebration tokens. We'll talk more on that next week, so the tips stay fresh in your head, but for now, if you could, like the video, subscribe for more WoW coverage, catch me live, and I'll catch you later. Let's have Bob close us out. Stay safe, stay healthy, and stay breezy.
So I have no song to cover, I'll just tell you what to do. Start the week off right by picking up everything that's blue, then you check the mail and get sad. Check the table and get bad, 'cause there's no way a cutie's worth a tender box. But now it's better. Then you do the things you care about, the pressure's all on you. Get to chest for gear and get to more for delves to do. Then you go around your warband, fly around the new land, then celebrate doing this for another 20 years. Until you're 90. Done.